It's great to have you with us from wherever you're tuning in from. For more information about Elevate Church or to contact us, head to our website elevatechurch.me and take us wherever you go by downloading our Elevate Church AU app. We hope this message inspires and helps you to take your next steps in your journey.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you all this morning. So we are launching a mini-series today and then continuing next week called The Bad Boys of Easter. So the women get a free kick. There's no bad girls of Easter, just bad boys. Typical. Before we do that, when it's the beginning of each month, we like to celebrate some of what God's doing and using us in the digital space. So each week we have an online experience, kind of like from our living room into yours if you're not here in Perth. So that's happening literally right now, and then that's available on demand. And this week, I don't know if you caught it, the two astronauts who have been stranded at the International Space Station for a long time did an interview, and one of those astronauts is, the male one, his name is Butch Wilmore, and for the time that Butch was in the International Space Station, he attended church online every single week. You could say that his weekly church experience was out of this world. So he tuned into his own church's online experience every week for the entire time he was up there. And in fact, let me read part of what he said in this interview. He said, "The word of God, I need it. My pastors are the finest pastors on or off, in this case, the planet. And to tie in and to worship with my church family was vital. I mean, it's part of what makes me go." Like, what a great reminder, right? So I'm sort of highlighting that as, if you can't be here on a Sunday, if you're in the Perth area, we want you here, we love it. You're not going to hear Princess impersonating me in worship if you're not here. But if you can't be here, it's a FIFO over there and so on and so forth, you've got a sick kid or whatever, there's opportunities to stay connected. And I mean, this is like, okay, so anyway, and then we have our podcast. So we've got people around the world that are tuning in. And in the last month, a couple of the people we heard from, Duncan in Kenya. Now, Duncan let us know he grew up as a Muslim and became a Christian, and he now leads a church in Kenya. Hello. So you wanted just to let us know that we're investing in him and in turn his church. Then Laurent, who is, now just those of you who were born in Africa, please, before I tell you where he's from, I want you to know that I know that the country and how you pronounce it is a bit controversial. He's either from Tanzania or Tanzania, and you can fight it out amongst yourselves. Anyway, the point is that Lauren leads a church in Tanzania, has been leading that church for 9 years, and that church, in fact, cares for over 200 orphans. And he's tuning in to what we're putting out there. So that's pretty great, right? So how about we welcome everyone joining us via our podcast this week. So we're launching this mini-series, The Bad Boys of Easter, leading up to the Easter weekend in just 2 weekends' time. And so today and next week, we're going to look at two particular characters who were instrumental in Jesus being crucified. Today, we're going to look at a guy named Caiaphas. Next week, we're going to look at a guy named Judas. And I'm going to make the point today, and I'm going to make the point again next week, that there's a little bit of them in all of us. So don't say I didn't warn you if you show up next week and you see me looking at you saying there's a bit of Judas in you, because there is, and we just want to learn from this whole thing, all right? So I kind of want to take us on a journey. This is a little bit of a different style of message than I'm used to preaching. This is a bit more of a teaching kind of thing, but it's on a journey of a very short but significant slice in history. And as I mentioned, I'm going to look through the lens of the first of these two bad boys of Easter, a guy named Joseph Caiaphas, who was the Jewish high priest in Jerusalem from 18 to 36 AD. Now, this role rendered him the most powerful Jewish religious leader in Jerusalem, the absolute top dog. And in fact, he was so powerful because his family had actually had the succession of this role for 4 decades. His father-in-law was a high priest. 5 of his brothers-in-law were high priests. And now he's got the role. And there were enormous financial perks for being the Jewish high priest. The Jewish people collected in Jerusalem a temple tax. Jewish people from all around the known world would send their temple tax to the high priest in Jerusalem, even if you didn't live in Jerusalem. This amount of money was so significant that the Romans, who had occupied most of these regions, they tried to stop it. They tried to shut it down because they didn't want the money leaving the provinces that they'd conquered. They wanted the people to prosper. But no, the Jewish people kept on sending the temple tax to Jerusalem, and it was being collected by the Jewish high priest. So now we enter this slice of history where Joseph Caiaphas is the Jewish high priest, the most powerful, the most influential, and quite likely the wealthiest person in Jerusalem. So you could kind of think about this guy in this role at this time. Everything was going really, really well for Joseph Caiaphas until a carpenter turned rabbi entered the pages of history and just started messing everything up for Joseph Caiaphas. So Jesus was going around and he was teaching. And it kind of wasn't really the problem because there was all sorts of people going around, all sorts of rabbis teaching all sorts of stuff. Now, people commented that Jesus' teaching was better than anything they've ever heard before, but it wasn't necessarily a big threat to Joseph Caiaphas. He started doing miracles. Well, that kind of caused the crowds to swell beyond just going and hearing a good rabbi teaching. I mean, did you hear that 15,000 people, he fed them with a little boy's lunchbox? You got to come and see this guy. Oh man, absolutely. And so the crowds began to build. So you've got the teaching, now you've got the miracles, and the threat started to escalate for Joseph Caiaphas and his colleagues, and they started to be concerned that Jesus, with the growing following that he was attracting, might actually trigger a civil war within Jerusalem. Now, it didn't help that Jesus was also constantly critical of Joseph Caiaphas and the Jewish religious leaders. I mean, he literally took some pretty direct shots at them. In your own time, if you want a bit of fun this afternoon, read Matthew 23, where it's recorded where Jesus is literally getting stuck into these Jewish religious leaders, and he wasn't holding back. This wasn't the Jesus you see on the oil paintings patting the lamb. No, this guy was, and let me show you one of the things he literally said to them to their faces: "You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell?" This is worse than the language they use on maths. I mean, this is like next level. He's going at them. So here we go. We've got a guy whose popularity is increasing by great teaching, growing a list of miracles successfully performed. He's now being a little bit critical of us, and these crowds are continuing to swell. Then came the final straw, the tipping point. Jesus raised somebody from the dead. Somebody significant, somebody that was well known, somebody that was rich and powerful and influential, somebody whose death would have made the front page of the news. Lazarus has died. And everyone's like, wow, that blows my mind. And then 4 days later, the headlines read, have you seen Lazarus today? He's back. And it's like, if you thought Jesus' popularity was great prior to that, you raise someone from the dead, people are going to come looking. They're going to come following. And so they should. This was not a normal thing. This was not an everyday thing. This was over the top. So I want to show you what happened next. If you've got your Bible app on your smartphone, you can scan this code. It's going to take us to John chapter 12. So John was one of Jesus' handpicked 12 disciples. He's the only one that died of natural causes, and I won't talk about that today, but that's worth noting. And he's one of the 4 biographers that we have access to about Jesus' life and ministry. So I'm going to drop us into there, and we're going to see that now Jesus, he's so powerful, and he's so popular. He's now a threat to the Jewish religious leaders. They literally couldn't let things go on like this anymore. They had to come up with a strategy to curb Jesus' influence. So they started showing up at Jesus' events and asking him trick questions. Trying to you're not so smart. You're not so powerful. You're a bit of a dum-dum. And Jesus never, ever once got tripped up by their trick questions. So they came to quickly realize, our strategy is not working. We need to come up with a new strategy. Well, many in the crowd had seen Jesus call Lazarus from the tomb, raising him from the dead, and they were telling others about it. Of course, why wouldn't you? And that was the reason so many went out to meet him, because they had heard about this miraculous sign. Well, then the Pharisees said to each other, there's nothing we can do. Look, everyone has gone after him. This is them just saying, well, we did our best to stop him. It's not working. I guess we're out of options here. Caiaphas, who was the boss of the bosses, if we were talking in modern day mafia parlance, he decided, no, this is not something we can just let go. So they called a meeting of the Jewish High Council. Now, to give you some context, and incidentally, we're in the run-up to a federal political election. You've probably noticed that. This High Council comprised 3 religious leaders groups, who absolutely did not get along on any level. This would have been, in today's, that the liberals and the Labor and the Greens and the Nationals and the Make Cycling Great Again party and all the independents would all come together, and they would all actually work together because they recognized the threat was a threat to all of them. So we'd better pool our resources in order to eliminate the threat. Well, what are we going to do? They asked each other. I mean, this man certainly performs many miraculous signs, so just hold there for a second. They weren't denying Jesus was doing something special. They actually recognized that this guy's got something extra going on. They couldn't deny Lazarus was back. Lazarus had left the building, and now Lazarus is back. Very much alive, very much walking around. So they acknowledged that this guy, Jesus, was doing miraculous signs. Now, those of you who are followers of Jesus, you know that the smart play right here is to get in line, to say, Jesus, I want you to take over my life. I want to follow you. If you say you're the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, be the King of my life. Be the Lord of my life. That's what you, but that's not what they did. If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him. And then the Roman army will come and destroy both our temple and our nation. Everything we've worked so hard for so long to accumulate will be gone because of this one man. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to eliminate the threat? Well, Caiaphas, who was the high priest at the time, said, look, you don't know what you're talking about. As if like, you think we're out of options? No, we got options. Here's what I proposed. You realize it's better for you that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed? Now, let me read between the lines here. Caiaphas was actually saying, don't you realize it's better that one man should die than for our whole power, influence? Like, we need to protect that. And if that means eliminating one person to eliminate the threat, then that's what we need to do. So this moment in history was the launch of Operation Protect at All Costs. You can read about it. That's what it's called. That's not what it's called. But that's what it was about. And so, because you read, now let me just double click on something. If you've already figured this out for yourself, then no doubt you're smarter than me. Caiaphas' objective wasn't to kill Jesus. Caiaphas' objective was to protect what they'd accumulated. Eliminating Jesus was simply a mechanism. So just relax, because I said at the beginning of this message, there's a little bit of Caiaphas in all of us. I don't think any of you have ever thought, I think I could kill Jesus. I think I could get behind that plot. I think I could get... No, I'm not assuming that, but I wonder if any of you have ever had something in your life that you've said to Jesus, sorry, mate, hands off that. I mean, I'll give you most of my life, but that area, that's really taking things a little bit too far. I mean, you know, I know I should go all in, but would you settle for mostly in? And I'll come back to that, but this next bit is like bonkers. So John's writing this historical biographical account of Jesus' life and ministry. He's writing this while he's an old man. And he's looking back on something that happened decades ago, and he knows what happened following. He knows the order of history from this very moment in history. So here's Caiaphas saying, I'm going to read it again. You don't realize that it's better for you, he means us, the priests, better for you, in other words, you know, come on, get with me on this, that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed. Well, John writes this in first person John. He did not say this on his own. As high priest at that time, he was led to prophesy that Jesus would die for the entire nation. And not only for that nation, but to bring together and unite all of the children of God scattered around the world, so that from that time on, the Jewish leaders plotted to bring down Jesus' death. To this day, 2,000 years later, 1/3 of the humans on this planet profess Jesus as their Lord, because one person died for the good of all the people. Caiaphas tried to eliminate the threat. He didn't eliminate the threat. He lit the fuse. And this thing's been burning and blowing up for 2,000 years. See, now the problem is that Caiaphas is trying to eliminate the threat. The problem is that Jewish people couldn't, or Jewish leaders couldn't kill Jewish people for breaking Jewish laws. Like the Romans wouldn't allow it. That was the sort of the power structure here. The only people that could kill people in the Roman Empire were the Romans. So you had to get the sign off from the Romans. But to get the sign off for the Romans, they had to be seen to be breaking a Roman law. The Romans couldn't care less if you were breaking a Jewish law. They say, that's not our problem. Figure that out amongst yourselves. But if you are accused of breaking a Roman law, well, that's a whole nother level. This thing gets escalated. This thing now goes to Rome for adjudication. And so Caiaphas and his friends, they come up with the idea of, let's accuse him of sedition. Now, we workshopped that word this morning, sedition. I can tell you what it means in Mandarin. But look, let me tell you in the context of this. They literally, Caiaphas and his cronies started letting the Roman people know that this guy, Jesus, has been walking around declaring himself as king. And the reason that was a problem is over the decades of Roman rule and Roman power and growing Roman influence, the Caesars started to see themselves as kings. And some of them started to call themselves kings. Napoleon Bonaparte did that many decades later. They say, so to see yourself as the boss of the Roman Empire, a Caesar, but really see yourself as king and want people to see you as king, to know that there's some rabbi rolling around Jerusalem declaring he's king, well, now you're breaking the Roman laws. Now we have a problem. Now the Romans needed to get involved and eliminate the threat. This wasn't a Jewish threat anymore. This was a Roman threat. So the story goes, and many of you know the story goes, that Jesus was put in front of the adjudicators. He was sentenced to death on a cross. He was buried inside a tomb. And I can just imagine Caiaphas and his friends were sitting back in their very expensive digs and thinking to themselves, phew, we dodged a bullet there, brothers. Oh, that was a close one. Until 3 days later, a messenger could be heard running down the corridors of Caiaphas' residence saying, boss, you're not going to believe this. That rabbi, the body, it's missing. And then, for the next few weeks, you thought the Lazarus sightings were a problem. Now there were Jesus sightings everywhere. This guy just kept showing up in locked rooms, showing up on beaches, just kept showing up. Not only that, the people who'd been following him, who when Jesus was sentenced to death, they all went into hiding because they were terrified that they'd be next. They were back out on the streets, but not only just on the streets, they were yelling the accusations at the Jewish leaders now themselves. You killed him. You did this. Come out of your office and say you're sorry. What happened to these timid people who were now publicly defying the Jewish leaders, essentially putting their own lives in the firing line? And I'm just saying, I think there's a little bit of Caiaphas in all of us. Now, Caiaphas, we can give him a whole pass. He didn't follow a God that he didn't particularly trust. We can accept that. Like, why would you, right? But here's something that I've observed. That too many Jesus followers resist a God that they say they trust. I mean, I know I should forgive, but how about we just leave that bit of my life over here? I know I should get out of that toxic relationship, but, bad love's better than no love. I know I shouldn't go there. I know I shouldn't hang out with them. I know I shouldn't spend money that way. I know I should be more generous, but can I just I've worked hard to keep that, so do you mind if I just protect that and I'll give you the rest? My observation is too many people want Jesus' salvation without having to fully respond to Jesus' call to submission. Because you're either king or you're not. Yeah. There's no such thing as a half king. You're either Lord or you're not. You're no such thing as a half Lord. Lord of my life or Lord of half my life. Well, Lord of half is actually Lord of zero, because you're saying that I'm sharing the throne. Move over, Jesus. My butt cheek goes on this half of the throne and you're welcome to the other half, and we'll just share it and we'll live happily ever after. But Jesus said, and here, look, I'm going to say, here's the bonkers thing. Here's the bonkers thing. We're willing to trust Jesus with our salvation, which is the most important thing we could ever trust him with. And yet we don't trust him with the other stuff that is way less important. Same Jesus. I'm willing to trust you with my salvation, but I'm not so sure about my finances. I'm willing to trust you with my salvation. I'm not so sure about my relationships. I'll remain in charge of that. I'll trust you with my salvation, but I'm not, how about I don't want to trust you with my business or career? And Jesus is not, come on. So there's a little bit of Caiaphas in all of us, and we've got to learn and we've got to trust and we've got to be able to declare that God, and we've been singing a song last few weeks that has the line, your way is better. Your way doesn't mean it's not going to cost us something. Doesn't mean it's always going to be comfortable, convenient, familiar, but it's always going to be better. And here's the thing, and I'm just going to throw in a bonus one just because I'm feeling good today. I'm going to throw in a bonus one. If you give everything over to Jesus, you will ultimately live with less regret. Because his way is better. You thought your way was better. You're an idiot. You know nothing. Of course we know something, but his way is better. Now, Elevate Youth last week, we were studying together the importance of influencers. Not influencers, although they're, but influencers. And looking at, we asked the question of our youth, do you have anyone, we didn't want to throw them under the bus, asking for a friend here. Do you have anyone in your life who's maybe kind of giving way to some negative influences and it's starting to impact them? And every one of them shared. Now, these are kids who are 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, right? And they're talking about some of their friends who are starting to make some poor decisions in their life because of the influence of some negative people. And we say to them, very, very simply, come on, you get this right. I said, I've just come out of an auditorium full of people, some of them are barely even breathing, and we're sitting here in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, and pretty much all of us would love the opportunity to be able to wind the clock back and do that one thing differently. Make that one decision differently. Be able to take back that thing. You get to do this right. So learn now that Jesus, being the number one influence in your life and trusting him with everything, is better. Here's this bottom line. Stop saying to Jesus, you're not the boss of me. My wife, Louisa, who is Italian, she says this to me all the time. But that's okay. I'm not Jesus. But she doesn't say this to Jesus all the time. That's the difference. So understand this. Saying yes to God, it will cost you something. But saying no to God will cost you more. Let me just finish with an observation and then a question. Well, actually, let me ask you two questions. One, I want you to kind of respond knowingly. In 2025, who is more well-known, more enduring, and more influential? Joseph Caiaphas or Jesus Christ? So in the run-up to Easter, let me give you some homework. Can can I encourage you over the next couple of weeks prayerfully to just kind of examine and let God examine your life and just look for the potential that there might be some area in your life that there's a little bit of Caiaphas that's kind of protecting. And maybe this is the year where you say, you know what? I'm going to finally turn that over to Jesus in my life as well. All right. All you Judases, I'll see you next week.
We really hope you got a lot out of this message. If you live in the Perth area, we'd love for you to join one of our live experiences. For times and directions, as well as information, head to our website, elevatechurch.me. For those of you beyond the Perth area, we'd love for you to connect with our online experience, which premieres every Sunday via YouTube and Facebook Live, and on demand immediately after. And to partner with us to reach more people by giving financially, head to our website, elevatechurch.me, and also download our Elevate Church AU app.